Hello there, good afternoon and welcome to The Pulse. We're coming to you live from our studios here in Accra. We're on digital terrestrial TV because we're free to air. You can get us live on DSTV channel 421 and Gold TV channel 144. This is JoyNews, independent, fearless and credible journalism. Coming up this afternoon on The Pulse, I am not sure whether she was deported or whether she actually fled the country. The exact words of President Akufo-Addo as he admits there are some uncertainties surrounding the deportation of Chinese Galamsey Queen Aisha Huang.
I'm not still sure whether she was in fact deported or whether she fled the country the first time and has now come back. But whatever, there still seems to be some uncertainty about it, but whichever way it is.
We have more on the story, and stay with us as we find answers to the questions actually boggling your mind on how the Galamsey Queen resurfaced in Ghana. It's all coming up here on The Pulse. Also, cocoa beans from Ghana risk being banned from the European Union markets following a legislation put forth by the European Commission on cocoa sustainability. We'll hear from the Cocoa Board on which exact measures are being taken to engage the European Union Commission for a review of this proposed legislation.
But we also believe that we all have shared objectives that are reflected, for example, in the Paris Agreement, as well as the SDGs, which Ghana subscribes to, which we are working to.
And this afternoon as well, Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu is challenging the power of the National Communications Authority to order the blocking of SIM cards that are yet to be registered. We have details as they describe as illegal the fees being charged for self-service SIM registration and even premium service for the Ghana card.
For calling on the Ministry of Communication and the National Communication Authority to desist from treating the communication sector as personal fiefdoms at the peril.
We have more from the minority shortly. The Pulse, as always, is brought to you by Global Communities Digni Lu, Affordable Safe Sanitation. Remember that this afternoon we're also streaming live on all of our social media handles. It's at JoyNews on TV. It's always a pleasure to be hosting you here on The Pulse. I am Blessed Sogah. Please stay for details. I'm not so sure whether she was deported or whether she actually fled the country. These are the exact words of President Akufo-Addo when he was asked about the resurfacing of Galamsey Kingpin Aisha Huang into the country. Well, the notorious Chinese national who was deported in 2018, well, at least that is what we were made to believe at the time, was arrested in Ghana under a new identity, which is N. Huang. She is facing currently charges of mining and engaging in state sale and purchase, actually, of minerals without a valid license. But then the big question on our lips this afternoon is, was Aisha Huang really deported back in 2018, as many of us knew it? Here's President Akufo-Addo admitting that he simply doesn't know about her status in an interview on a Ho-based radio station, Stone City FM.
First of all, it's now a subject of national discussion.
Okay.
Everywhere you go, this matter of Galamsey will at least achieve that purpose of heightening consciousness about it as an evil. When I came, nobody was talking about Galamsey. Since we came and focused on it, it is now the subject of discussions in homes, in offices, in meetings all across Ghana. So that's one very positive development. Secondly, many of the measures that have been put in place are yielding fruit. The community mining schemes that are being established across the country systematically are being rolled out. The efforts there are to keep our waters clean have not succeeded in their entirety, but some measurable increase in performance there is also taking place. Generally, you can see that, yes, there will be sensational cases, and the matter is not over. The Aisha Huang is a sort of, has become a short form for everything to do with, especially, unfortunately, with the involvement of foreigners, especially Chinese, in these illicit and dangerous acts in our country. But I'm persuaded that much of the work that is being done, and a lot of these things are going on without too much publicity, is gradually yielding results. When you have a situation like this woman who was, I'm not still sure whether she was in fact deported or whether she fled the country the first time and has now come back, but whatever. There still seems to be some uncertainty about it. But whichever way it is, she has become the sort of nickname for all that the Galamsey represents. And unfortunately, also for the involvement of Chinese nationals in Ghana in this particular illicit trade. We have constantly to work at it. We need to have the cooperation of the courts. Until recently, till I came, the punishment for people caught was relatively light, a fine, and even if we're going to go to custodial sentences, was relatively minimal. We've changed the law to stiffen the punishments for people caught. For foreigners, I think it's now 15 to 25 years, depending on the severity of what it is. So we're also now going to test our judicial system, to what extent it is going to be responsive, especially when somebody like her goes on to trial. But I'm persuaded that the fight is in the right place. It's not an easy fight. You can see in the last election, the concerted efforts that the Galamsey community made to try and turn us out of office because of our fight. Fortunately, the good people of Ghana decided otherwise. But it shows you the extent to which this fight is biting. People made these desperate efforts to throw out the party they thought was spearheading the anti-Galamsey fight.
Well, I'm sure that you have many questions after listening to the president there, but the minority is beginning to react to this. Let's cross you over now to New York. Joining us via Zoom is James Agalga, his ranking member on the Defense and Interior Committee, joining us to also share his comments on this. In fact, what's your initial reaction, first of all, having heard about the circumstances surrounding her departure, at least in 2018 as we know it? The impression under which many of us were, was that this was the lady who threatened territorial integrity and as a result was deported. But the president is not sure. So do you have any official records, at least from your committee side, on what the status was in 2018, James?
I am indeed very surprised that the president, who is the chairman of the National Security Council, is now telling us that he is not too sure whether the lady in question was deported or not. Look here, as the chairman of the National Security Council, the president receives security briefings regularly, even on a daily basis, if he's in the country, by the National Intelligence Bureau, by the Minister for the Interior, and even by the military intelligence. And so whether or not the lady was deported from this country in 2018 is a matter that the president should be versed with. And so for the president to say he is not too sure clearly shows that this is a president who is not on top of the security issues of his country. And yet he's the chairman of the National Security Council. This is very worrying. And for me, I would say, without any fear of contradiction, that the president clearly is incompetent and is not on top of the security issues of our country. That is very dangerous, especially given the fact that we now live in an era where we are saddled with several security issues, threat of terrorism. If the president is not on top of the security issues of our country, And then it means that we are in deep trouble.
Okay, well, some may say this is your personal opinion and readings into what the performance of the president has been. But of course, you are public officers as well as members of parliament serving on the Interior and Defense Committee. Back in 2018, this matter was very topical. So I'm sure that you had some briefing, at least if not from the Ghana Police Service. You may be having some briefings from National Security, either through the minister or whichever respective agency you are dealing with. What was the status?
Yes.
What was the status of Aisha Huang in 2018, and what decision was taken on her at the time?
So what we do know is that the minister responsible for the interior signed a deportation warrant, or if you like, order, which was carried through by the Comptroller General of the Ghana Immigration Service. I have personally cited some documents signed by.
I'm sorry for cutting through, but I'm sorry for
force.
cutting through. But you're telling us now that you've seen a deportation warrant at the time in 2018, with President Akufo-Addo then being the chair of the National Security Council, that this lady in question was supposed to have been deported. Did you follow up to see if indeed she was deported?
Well, if the president, the man responsible for the overall security of our country, is now casting doubt on the validity of the deportation orders that I have seen, then of course I would tell you for a fact that I'm left in a state of confusion, because as head of our country's security, the chairman of the National Security Council, who must receive security briefings from all the security agencies of our country, if he comes out and says something which seeks to contradict what I have cited, then of course, like I said before, I am left in a total state of confusion. And this is a matter that is of concern to me, because here we are talking about the chairman of our National Security Council. He should be on top of security issues. And therefore, if he casts doubt on what I have seen before, then who am I to say I am not confused? But once again, that brings to the fore the kind of manager we have over our national security affairs.
But I guess you've been repetitive on that point, but knowing who Aisha Huang is, at least from sources and what they're telling us, this appears to be a very powerful foreign national, Chinese for that matter. We're told that she is in possession of some sex videos of the political class. We're not told if it's just from the NPP or the New Patriotic Party. So it appears that we're dealing with a very powerful force in the country, isn't it?
Well, I am not in a position to speak to those issues, but what is most important for me is the president's take on the question of whether or not she was deported from this country.
Yeah, but the question about the personality, you do agree, would matter, because this is someone we're told you, the politicians, are not able to crack down on. Because mind you, Aisha Huang has been in this country dating way before 2018 when that deportation notice was given. She was around when, for instance, you were in power then as the National Democratic Congress.
You want us to discuss the performance of the NDC with respect to the fight against Galamsey?
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. I'm talking about the personality.
I would tell you.
Yeah.
I would tell you. Mm-hmm. I would tell you that the NDC did its part. During our tenure, we deported close to 5,000 Chinese nationals from our country. And the fact of deportation of the number I am talking about was not in question. The chairman of the Security Council at the time was not in doubt as to whether the close to 5,000 Chinese citizens they left our country's shores or not. He was very certain and clear in his mind that his anti-Galamsey task force, which was led by the Minister for Lands and Forestry at the time, carried through his orders. But we are now talking about a president who is not certain whether a certain deportation order was carried through or not. And you want us to engage in a game of
Well,
comparisons.
not exactly, not exactly my
This will
objective.
wash.
It's
This
just
will
about.
wash. Let us not shift the goalposts. I am saying that we now have a president who has demonstrated how incompetent he is when it comes to managing our country's security, to the extent that he cannot even be sure whether what his heads of security agencies have put out there in the public domain with respect to the deportation of this lady is true or not. He's put all of us in a state of doubt. So let's not go back and say
Okay.
under the NDC era,
Right.
please, those comparisons will simply not work.
Well,
let us deal with the issue that before our eyes.
I get you, but of course, you were in charge of Interior, and so you were receiving a lot of intelligence reports to give you that sense of who we're dealing with here. Aisha Huang, as we're being told. In fact, I need to point out that Adib San is a security analyst. He will be joining the conversation shortly. But I want to find out from you one more time, James Agalga, about the processes in Parliament and what you intend to do about this. Knowing now that, of course, you cited that document, issuing the deportation notice, and yet we're not sure, in the words of the president, if that was carried out. What do you intend to do as minority in Parliament, especially from the side of the committee in charge of Interior and Defense?
As you can see, we are on recess at the moment. That is why I am in New York to attend some of the proceedings at the General Assembly. Definitely, when Parliament reconvenes, these are very serious issues. Just before I departed for New York, we had some engagements with the security services under our jurisdiction. We did some budget performance review, and some of these matters came to the fore. Like I said before, the Immigration Service itself made it very clear that some deportation order was carried through. But like I said before, the president has now thrown or cast doubt into what we were told by way of our briefings by the Ministry of the Interior. And so we would want to probe deep into these matters and satisfy ourselves that what we heard from the Ministry of the Interior and its agencies when they appeared before the committee was indeed true.
We've heard from the likes of former President John Dramani Mahama, who happens to be your 2020 flag bearer. He says the president has in fact lost the fight, not just against corruption, but against illegal mining. Do you share the same concerns in Parliament as well?
Of course, yes. The former president made it very clear that the president put his own presidency on the line, and he did state that if he, President Akufo-Addo, were to fail in his fight against Galamsey, he would resign, because that is how we understood him when he said categorically that he was going to put his presidency on the line.
He made the statements in his first term. What would you say? He made these statements in his first term. What would you say to someone who walks up to you and say, well, that social contract has ended? He's now in the second term. At least we've never heard him, not even at the time he was being sworn in for the second time, say that, well, I'm putting my presidency on the line for this.
The point I'm seeking to make is that there are functionaries of the president's government who are neck deep involved in the Galamsey menace. We saw videos out there, these videos of Charles Bisu receiving money, and this was an individual who worked from the presidency. Nothing happened to him. There are allegations of government functionaries, an MPP women's organizer who was engaged in Galamsey activities. Her machinery, or if you like, equipment, were burnt. Beyond the burning, what happened to the lady in question? Absolutely nothing. So the point I'm making is that the president is simply paying lip service to the fight against Galamsey because some of the people who are involved in the menace in his government. And he just can't take action against them because they are his own people. So the fight against Galamsey is a flop. And like the former president said, in some other countries, the president would have done the honorable thing by resigning. But listen to him. When he talks
You
about
want the
fight
president to
against
resign?
Galamsey, I mean,
You want the president to resign?
of course he should do the honorable thing because he put his presidency on the line. When evidence started emerging of certain individuals within his own government, neck deep involved in Galamsey-related activities, he should have taken decisive action. Remember the issue of the Central Regional Chairman of the MPP, Eko Ewusi, who was responsible for the missing excavators. What happened to Eko Ewusi? Is it because he was regional chairman of the MPP? The women's organizer of that party was caught red-handed, her equipment bent. What happened to her? She has beat you. What happened to him? So the president clearly has not been able to cleanse his own house of the Galamsey menace. And I can understand because these are members of his party leadership. That is why he just can't bite. So when he comes out there and says he's serious about the fight against Galamsey, I mean, the president's are tight and he's a major flop.
Okay, James Agala, just hold on for me. Let me bring in Adib Sani now. He's a security analyst. Adib, and we're being told by the president now that he's not sure if indeed Aisha Huang was deported, contrary to the reports that we've been receiving. I guess this goes to the heart of the reports that came through from the small-scale miners, indicating that she's been with us for the past 2 years, or even more.
Well, first of all, let me say a very good morning to Honorable Agaga. In the part of the world he finds himself, I'm sure it's morning.
Yes.
Morning. All right, so when I heard about what the president said, I couldn't believe it. So I had a media source send me the video, and one word can best describe what I heard. I was absolutely gobsmacked. It is no accident the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. What in essence it means is the president is the #1 protector and defender of the very territorial integrity of Ghana. And so when things of these goes wrong, it is him we blame because constitutionally he is supposed to ensure that you and I are able to go to bed with our 2 eyes closed. Unfortunately, the president is not even sure whether indeed this lady in question was deported or not, when the whole country was deceived, perhaps, into thinking that she was deported. In fact, I heard it from a number of sources that it is likely this lady wasn't deported, as we were made to believe. And so this cast a very dark shadow over our fight against Galamsey and whether indeed we would ever succeed. I am a project manager. I don't believe in how much you've spent on a project. I don't believe in the number of resources you've put into it. I don't believe in Operation Vanguard and all that. I believe in outcomes. To what end? So if you do all of this and still you go out there and they are still engaging in that activity, would you say you've succeeded?
Some would say...
And so we have a lot of questions that has to be answered.
Some would argue that in spite of all the criticisms against the president for this very comment, his Attorney General, Godfred Dami, is indeed going ahead with prosecutions dating back to 2018 in terms of the charges that were leveled against her. So the rule of law may work in the end, regardless of whatever the president may be saying at this point.
The rule of law hasn't worked in 1,000 cases. I'm hoping this time around is good. So I'm going to take them by their words. In the past, we've had hundreds and hundreds of Chinese citizens arrested at mining sites. Today, when Manasseh Azure wrote through the RTI to the prison service, for how many Chinese were in Ghana's jail? The whole of Ghana's prison system, only 2, and we don't know whether it is even associated with Galamsey or not. So what happened to these individuals? And this also adds to existing suspicions over whether indeed these individuals are not the same recycled back into the system. We arrest them, we claim we deport them, then the same individuals are found in these communities. So the probability that they are being recycled into the system is very high. And it makes me wonder whether indeed someone is sleeping on the job or someone is deliberately complicit in this whole idea. Now, we have a president who is not even aware. Meanwhile, the president, by the way, receives daily security briefing, no matter where he is.
Yeah, but why not hold to account? We're not sure what the details may be, because normally that doesn't happen where you have details of that briefing being put out in the public space. So we're not sure if this is exactly the president's fault or that of the security chiefs. Who should be paying the price here?
Well, for a high-profile case like that of Aisha One, which got the whole country talking, which made it to international news, and that got a senior minister at that time asking how it would benefit Ghanaians if she is arrested or prosecuted, I would expect the president to know. I mean, a president who cares about the people should know the price of an olunka of tomatoes on the market today. Okay? I mean, that might sound funny, but he's supposed to know. Okay? So I think that it's either the president is nonchalant or his security managers are not doing a great job. And so this whole thing should go beyond Aisha One. I would wish to see not just Aisha One getting prosecuted, but a more holistic investigation, sort of an inquiry done into the circumstance behind her re-entry into the country, how she managed to even get a Ghana card despite the fact that it's biometric in nature and all that. So we need to we should cast the net wide. And also because this has a direct correlation with our efforts, with our fight against terrorism. So if we are not able to detect an individual like Aisha One, how would we be able to detect terrorists, which is even much more laborious to do?
And in fact, why are we facing this difficulty in terms of dealing with the foreign nationals who may be engaged in illegal mining? It's as simple as that. They're not even our citizens, so dealing with them should be, or should have been, much more easier.
Complicity. As simple as that. I mean, when you hear people talking about official complicity, they are right. Like Honorable rightly mentioned, we saw it. Everybody saw it. Someone supposed to ensure Galamsey doesn't happen, taking bribes, and he's still on the job. So, it amazes me when people come out to say we are committed, yet their actions doesn't show they are committed.
Okay.
So if we are able to break that jinx, that complicity bit of it, I'm sure we should be doing a great deal of that.
Well, thanks, Adib. This is a bigger conversation we need to look at, the issue about the holistic fight against the illegal mining. The president has adopted some radical approach. First of all, it was about banning of excavators and then the deployment of foot on the ground. But for you, James Agalga, what should be changing now about our approach? It seems not to have been working all over these years. James Agalga,
I think
yes.
The government, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
I think the government needs to be proactive. They should start by looking within, get rid of the characters who are neck deep involved in Galamsey activities, but in one way or the other have found their way into government's inner circles. For me, that is the starting point. When government is able to rid itself of the elements involved in Galamsey from within, then we would be able to tackle the problem head on from without. So those who have infiltrated our country, we can then deal with them in a more decisive way. Not until we tackle the problem from within, trust me, there would be collusion here and there, and that would make the fight against Galamsey very, very difficult. I recall how some people dressed in military uniform actually went after members of Operation Vanguard when they uncovered some mining site within forest reserve in their region. Were promised that some investigations would be carried out to determine the true identities of the men who were spotted in military uniform. Once again, nothing came out of that investigation. That is why I'm saying there are elements from within the government itself who are neck deep involved in the Galamsey enterprise. And not until we get rid of those characters, the fight against Galamsey is going to be an illusion.
Yeah, but mind you, the president is still keeping the soldiers on the ground just to check issues of the pollution of our water bodies. So what do we do with the men that we're deploying, given the fact that you feel that the radical approach is not working?
Well, those who have been deployed, it appears, are not allowed to work without the usual interferences from the political elite. And that is the problem, which is why I believe the best way or approach to deal with the menace is for government to rid itself of those characters who are neck deep involved in the menace. If they're able to do that, and you deploy the security agencies, including the military, and they know their mandate is to flush out those involved in the exercise, or if you like, Galamsey menace, we would begin to get some results.
In fact, you may criticize him for making those statements, but then it's a very important time for us to look at the call by the senior minister, Yao Safumafo, for us to focus on rather building ourselves and not necessarily being fixated on the likes of Aisha Huang. For those who do not have that picture in mind, try and paint it to us. What's the implication to national security if Aisha Huang is simply put behind bars? I mean, what do we gain from this? I guess that's the position of the senior minister on this.
Well, we're talking about Galamsey, and so I do not think that the pollution of our water bodies and what you see, the destruction of even forest reserves, we are told that we are now left with less than 1 million hectares of forest. Cocoa farms are being planted and so on. I don't think that we can attribute this to one person, Aisha Wang. I don't think so. Which is why I am saying that we need to have a broader discussion to try to unravel why the security apparatus, Operation Vanguard, has so far failed us. What are the causes? And I am saying that, look, we need to look within because the evidence abounds. Excavators seized, and a certain Eko Awisi is responsible for the custody of them. The next moment, all 500 excavators are missing, and yet nothing happens. You see somebody from within the presidency receiving bribes. He's captured on camera. Nothing happens. A women's organizer is involved, is caught. All we see is that some equipment belonging to that person are bent. And that is the end of story.
Okay, because what we don't have...
means is that
Right, but because we don't have all of the time, I just want you to wrap up with me on this. There are two options for government now: to continue with the criminal prosecution, which may take a very long time in the view of some experts, not at least finishing that in this year. And the
enterprise.
Yes, but James Agaga, if you can hear me now, let's wrap up on the issue, the options available to government. The choice to either continue with the prosecution, criminal prosecution, dating back to 2018, or to deport her immediately. If government had the options on the table right now, I mean, before the president, what would you advise from the position of the minority?
Well, I wouldn't advise the president. I don't have that capacity. The Attorney General, in whom the prosecutorial powers of the state are vested has spoken. He says he's going to prosecute the matter. I would rather adopt a wait and see attitude. Let's see how the prosecution fares. But we must caution that the rights of the accused, and that is a constitutional injunction, it must be respected. Let the trial, commence, and let's see how the state would fare. That is all I would say for now. But nobody, it's not even the president, can direct the Attorney General on how to proceed with the exercise of his prosecutorial powers under Article 88 of the Constitution. So, knowing full well what that means, and as a lawyer myself, I am not going to pretend that I have the capacity to advise the Attorney General as to how to proceed.
Do you feel the comments of the president would dampen the spirit of the Attorney General?
Well, the president's comments should be viewed from the security point of view, which may not have a direct bearing on the work of the Attorney General. As the chairman of the National Security Council, and of course, my brother Sani Adib added another dimension. He doubles as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of our country. It is really unfortunate and sad that our president is not on top of our security. And that, for me, is something that needs to be watched carefully.
Anyway, we need to leave it here. James Agalga, a member of the Defense and Interior Committee. In fact, there's more on illegal mining because the effects are telling. This afternoon as well, we're in fact learning that cocoa beans from Ghana actually risk being banned on the European Union and Switzerland markets as the European Commission is putting forth legislation on cocoa sustainability. Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, as we know, it accounts for over 60% of global cocoa beans production, but speculative illegal mining activities close to cocoa farms are beginning to trigger some concerns on the international market, and the EU is considering a complete ban on cocoa beans from non-adherent countries in a bid to, of course, break on deforestation, which is largely fueling climate change. So Latif Idris has more on this in this report.
We enjoy this delicious chocolate and reap the economic benefits from the production of cocoa in Ghana, largely because of the sustainable cocoa produced between Ghana and neighboring Cote d'Ivoire. But there is a huge risk beckoning as the European Union and Switzerland put forth what it describes as the sustainable cocoa legislation.
Japan has already taken the lead by drastically reducing importation of Ghana's cocoa beans after the discovery of chemical residue in the beans exported to the Asian country.
When I talk about threats to the environment emanating from galamsey and the use of banned chemical substances, I'm not a scientist, but at least I know it goes into the groundwater and it comes up through the food chain. And I think Japan has either reduced or banned cocoa, the raw beans, because there have been some residue, chemical residue. It's only a matter of time that other countries and other producers or buyers will say the quality of that product is not good enough.
The European Union is seriously considering a harsher approach. The proposed new EU legislation on deforestation could hurt cocoa exports from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. The two West African nations account for over 60% of global cocoa beans production. After years of cautions, the European Union Commission in November 2021 put forth a regulation on deforestation-free supply chains, and cocoa was one of 5 global commodities selected for stricter regulation. If an observatory group is able to confirm widespread deforestation in cocoa-producing countries, paramount among the options being considered by the EU is a complete ban of cocoa products from those countries from entering their market. China has in recent years embarked on an aggressive cocoa production drive.
If we go back to the 2017-2018 escape of Aisha Wang, and the argument that she has been released because we were looking for the Sino-Hydro loan, and that where she should be to be prosecuted, it could affect the loan, then Aisha is not an ordinary Chinese gangster. She's an agent of the state. She's a spy.
It therefore brings into sharp focus allegations by security expert Professor Kwesi Enin that the Chinese government may have deployed spies to collude with some Ghanaians to destroy Ghana's forest in order to trigger the EU ban on the country's cocoa beans.
Now, all those who do this mining, people that we know, or there are people who are aligned to groups and organizations that may not want this country's welfare, but are interested in infiltrating these communities and gangs and panning for high value, small, easily transportable, easily hidden, and easily sold.
If the Chinese, as speculated by Professor Enin, succeed at this economic warfare and espionage, the European Union will be left with no other option than to import cocoa beans from countries that apply the cocoa sustainability legislation.
The widespread speculative mining taking place across Ghana's regions could be the country's undoing.
Okay, so that's Steph here. Let's bring in Fifi Boafo, Public Affairs Manager at Cocoa Board, joining us via Zoom now. Thank you, sir, for your time. We also do have joining us Joseph Opoku-Gapu, head of our Environment and Agri Desk here at JoyNews, joining us live from the United States, and also Anthony Morrison, CEO, Chamber of Agribusiness. Thank you all for your time. I'll start off with you, Fifi. How close and closer are we to this threat that we're likely to face sanctions from the EU? And what steps are you really taking at Cocoa Board to actually check all of these challenges? Fifi, if you can hear me, you'd have to, first of all, unmute so we can get the point you're making.
Well, let me indicate that.
Yes, go ahead. I can hear you.
Okay. Let me say that the European Union for over 2 years have been engaging. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Yes,
you can just make the point. I can hear you.
Hello?
I can hear you, Fifi. Just go ahead and make the point.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll try.
Has been engaged.
Well, it appears that some challenge there. Let's rework the lines to Fifi. But for now, Joseph, of course, you've been monitoring the trend and what the demands of the EU market is. But for those who do not understand the technicalities of how some residues may affect the quality of the cocoa pods, just walk us through that process and tell us about how imminent the sanction may be applied on us as a nation.
Well, there's just to it's the EU to then threaten the sanctions, to then get a response from Cocoa Board in terms of conversations around efforts to deal with this particular problem. And I'm drawing attention to this because this is not a conversation that started today. Back in 2018, somewhere in October 2018, I'm a member of the Agricultural Environment Analysts Association. We actually sent a petition to Cocoa Board drawing attention to how illegal mining activities and related such illegalities are creating situations of destruction of cocoa fields and all, and requested some to the extent that copies of this petition ended up in Parliament House. Also at the level of the executive, nothing was seen. So it's just rather interesting that it's now taking threats from the European Union. Before now, we're seeing an effort to then deal with the problem. But then, hey, this is my reading of it. These threats may be real, but the reality remains that the European Union hasn't figured out yet an alternative in terms of the kind of cocoa beans that they would want to make use of for their chocolate, and it's a huge industry in that side of the world. And these threats may come, but I'm very much in doubt that they would go ahead and implement it fully by banning cocoa from Ghana. But that doesn't mean we should do nothing about it. The point I'm drawing attention to is that when locals raise these concerns and farmers complain about the destruction of the farm fields, and the reality then dawns on us right from concerns being raised locally. It's about time that officials like those at the Ghana Cocoa Board pay attention and deal with some of these challenges than to wait for others to step in before we start running helter-skelter.
Yeah, how much of a premium does the international market place on cocoa boards from Ghana?
Being the second largest producer of cocoa, obviously, a lot of what we do in Ghana as cocoa production is concerned. More importantly, our cocoa is considered very much a high premium cocoa by virtue of all the practices that then go in to help ensure that it's dried appropriately, it's well taken care of. So then a certain premium is very much placed on that. And I think that's what we should be leveraging our own past, a huge cocoa producing country. Look, how do we deal with some of these challenges with the illegal mining activities getting onto the cocoa fields and all? It's about ensuring that the farmers are earning better remuneration. And one way around it is creating a situation where a lot more processing of the cocoa is happening locally to then ensure that much more of the resources from the cocoa field is ending up in the hands of Ghanaians and farmers for that matter. The statistics show that the ordinary cocoa farmer is earning 6% of the total value of every bar of chocolate that you buy on the European market, for example. That's obviously out of place. And what that means is our natural resources are creating wealth for third and fourth parties and outside countries. And it's about time we looked at that, dealt with it, and created a situation where a lot of the money is staying here locally through increased processing, not processing into semi-finished products, but into real finished products, so there is enough available resources. And that will then kind of discourage a situation where the farmers would let go of their farm fields to allow for illegal mining activities on their farm.
Okay, since you're making a call to action, let's bring through now Fifi Buffo. Earlier we're having some challenges connecting with you. I hope that we have a much more stable line now. But yes, we're closer to that threat. But what steps are you taking at CocoaBot to check this?
Well, let me indicate that the conversation between Cocoa Board and the European Union did not start today. And indeed, the document being referred to is out of a conversation that has taken place continuously for over 2 years. Indeed, before the proposal came, there were some conversations that were ongoing. And then when this legislation was proposed, we've had a series of discussions. I've indicated on your network before that when they started this, there was a period, about 6-month period, where we almost every week had meetings with the team from the European Union on the proposed bill, where we also make input into what was being discussed. Of course, we've made our point, and then what they seek to implement is also on the table. But let me say that this is not something Cocoa Board or Ghana is not interested in. We are very much interested in protecting our farm fields, because if we lose it, of course, everybody within the chain is also off. Apart from that, we all know the consequences of illegal mining on our environment. But as to whether or not we risk being banned from shipping cocoa to the European Union, I don't think we are close as being suggested, because illegal mining, deforestation is one issue, but that's the second leg of it. There are expectations of us that will make a country or a cocoa farmer be able to ship its cocoa to the European market. But that expectation, that's what we are working on. I'm sure Joseph, who was talking about, is very familiar with the cocoa management system being implemented. So the cocoa management system is going to help us with the traceability of our industry, where we can, for example, say that cocoa from farmer A's farm in the eastern region, Ashanti region, or any part of the country, and that farm is actually located off the forest reserve. Because the sustainability discussion that is ongoing is not just primarily on illegal mining, but it has to be with deforestation generally, issues about child labor and all that. And that is what we are working on. So the concerns are legitimate, it is being worked on, but it's not a case to say that we've gone to sleep and then we are not working on that.
What are the experts telling you? Because you carry out scientific research, at least in some of your departments. How close or otherwise are we to this? Because we all see the clear picture of how telling the effects are in terms of illegal mining on our farmlands.
I think now the criteria for a country to be able to export to the European market has clearly been outlined. Even though the document is still going through some conversation and some discussion, it is for us to say that, okay, we are able to meet this criteria, and based on that, we are able to export to the European market. We believe that based on what has been done, we are not too far from saying that, yes, we'll be able to export to the European market and we'll have a challenge. In terms of rating, there are different means of rating a country. So one is the cocoa produced in off-reserve. That is the first step. We are also looking at general performance in terms of how the country is protecting its forest cover. And that is where the issues about illegal mining comes in. Even though the illegal mining on its own affects cocoa production, that is the first leg of it. But in terms of what the European Union is looking for, you should be able to prove to the European Union that the cocoa that is being exported to the European market, it is cocoa that was not produced from a forest reserve, that was produced deforestation-free, that was produced child labor-free, and that is the issue. So I think the conversation seemed to say that, okay, the fact that there is illegal mining automatically means that cocoa cannot be exported to the European market. It has its effect, but that is not exactly what the EU is looking at.
And this farmer management system that you're talking about, have you started rolling it out? And how come that we're not seeing the effects of it?
Well, I'm sure all persons who are very much interested in what is happening in the cocoa fields are aware of the cocoa management system and the registration ongoing. So the registration takes the biodata, the farm household information, as well as the polygon maps of the farm. And so far, all the cocoa regions in Ghana have been registered. The only region that is yet to be registered fully is Western North, and the team is already in Western North registering the farms. So what happened after the full roll-up of this arrangement or the system is that we'll be able to say that Farmer Kofi has a household of 6 people, wife, 4 children. He is in Suryeboa in Sujamai district. His farm is within this enclave, that part of the country where the farmer is producing from is an off-reserve. So when the system is fully completed, it is superimposed on what the Forestry Commission has, where we'll be able to tell that these areas where we have cocoa farms are not supposed to be places for cocoa farm because it's a forest reserve. And based on that, such farmers will have to leave it, because if they continue to stay in that forest, it means that cocoa from Ghana will suffer, or you'll not be able to export cocoa from that area. The issue specifically about illegal mining, or even the small-scale mining, has to do with people who are looking for gold, and then they are almost looking for every possible land where they can mine. The geologists tell you that if you look at places where usually cocoa do well, it is also possible to have gold from such places. So in most cocoa growing regions or cocoa growing districts, you also have miners also trying to explore for gold. The issue about how much farmers earn is a very important question, because if the farmer is not earning so much, the likelihood or the possibility for the farmer to give out his or her farm to these miners is very high. So that is one of the things we are dealing with. It is not within our domain to just say that, okay, all of a sudden prices of cocoa at the farm gate is going to be increased. It is largely dependent on what is achieved at the terminal market. And if you look at arrangements such as a living income differential, these are all means seeking to improve how much they are able to realize at the market to improve the farmer income.
I want to bring in at this point Anthony Morrison. He's Chief Executive Officer of the Chamber of Agribusiness. Fifi, stay with us. So these are the measures being rolled out by COCOBOD to check the situation. From the perspective of the chamber, what more could we be doing as a country? Because this is a cash crop. But kindly unmute for me so I can get the points, Anthony. Yes, right.
Yes. Thank you very much, and very good afternoon to your viewers. I think as a country, we have not properly contextualized our most as a country. European Union has been telling on us for a while now. This is not the first time. I remember last year we did a press conference at the International Press Center where we raised issues with the deplorable condition of water bodies around the cocoa farming areas, and which were also to the Galamsey site. That miserably to elevate the situation. We've seen issues, areas where cocoa farms have actually been destroyed for Galamsey. As we speak now, I think government would have been able to mitigate this challenge rather than going to spend a lot of taxpayers' money to engage European Union lawyers to review their legislation. To tell you the truth, European Union actually cares about their health, their citizens. And if, as a country, we invest so much into health and we allow foreigners to come in and destroy our livelihoods, our water bodies, and several others, I think that this is the least we can speak of an industry that is facing several challenges to talk about. And for government to sit down for us to get to this point.
But it's not as though we're that close to these sanctions as well as FIFI is telling us.
Please, let's not underestimate what is going on. The European Union did not just stand up to start looking at legislations. These are people who are very critical about research, who are very critical about impact of human activities on the health of their citizens. So it's not like our case where we stand up and we begin to do things. No, the European Union are very meticulous. And just as the United States of America and other counterparts, we know that there are already some work being done by other organizations as well. So let's not sit down and think that we can just water this by using a press statement or a PR system. No, we need to make sure that all ongoing Galamsey or illegal mining in the country are halted. That is what we need to do. The European Union will come clear and come forcefully on us. If, as a country, we are not able to get the $1.5 billion we make annually out of cocoa and the various derivatives, what are we going to do as a country? This is the time that we need to be serious. If you are not serious about governance, we are not serious about your food systems, we are not serious about your health, you are not serious about your water bodies and other management, other countries are.
Okay.
And
how about the farmer management system, which we're being told about, the fact that we're able to track and to make sure that we check these human activities that you're talking about?
Well, we do have more than 1.5 million farmers within the cocoa industries. And in terms of the household, we know that according to the last census, agriculture census, there are well over 11.2 million agriculture households. In fact, if you take a quarter or almost half of that are into agriculture and into cocoa as well. Now, the management, the farmer management is a key issue here. We will have to be looking at how we are actually supporting farmers. FAO has stated that as a country, we do not have any social intervention mechanism for our farmers. And this also borders a lot on the farmer management system. That aside, market has also been a major issue, and sometimes delay in payment on the side of government for supplies of cocoa beans and several others. So these are some of the things we need to be looking at, and also scholarship or education or skill development for the dependent of these farmers and their health needs. How critically have we been able to mitigate some of their concerns. All this comes on board when we're talking about farmer management.
Okay. For you, Opoku-Gakpo, what should we be doing, knowing now that there are some reports that are raising red flags of our production process? I mean, practically, are there some things that we should be doing? And have we even gotten to this level before? I mean, looking at where we're coming from.
Well, the problem keeps getting worse with each passing day as we've seen the situation develop. And I'm really still not convinced that the European Union will go ahead with that legislation because they really haven't figured out a real alternative yet. But we wait to see. However, here in Ghana, we are having a situation where on the average cocoa farm, if I'm not mistaken, the yield per hectare is hovering around 350 to 400 kilogram per hectare. Elsewhere in Latin America, the produce is as much as double of that. If we really want to create a situation where the farms are more productive, far less farm fields are being destroyed to make way for cocoa farms, but then we still get high yields, that may well be a solution. So we will then have a situation where a hectare of cocoa farm is yielding far more than it's yielding currently, and help create a situation where we wouldn't have to destroy more forest in order to grow more cocoa. So I will urge Cocoa Board to invest a lot more in that in terms of improved seedlings, making available adequate fertilizers for the farmers to use, making available extension services to them so they're able to then improve upon their yield. So we don't have to continue harvesting or cutting down more trees to grow a lot more cocoa, but getting more yield even from the current average farm sizes that we have.
Right, and it's just about the regulator. How about the farmers themselves in all of this?
Well, it goes back to the reality that a lot of folks who are engaged in agricultural productivity generally, just as a lot of other fields, need the necessary support in terms of capacity building to be able to make a real difference. It goes back to a point that a lot of the agricultural stakeholders have been preaching, that we see situations where farmers are not exactly treating farming as real business entities, but then as their way of life. So then we need to see situations where farmers are seeing their production activities, their farming activities as real business, and investing their good money in it and gaining the adequate returns. Once that is happening, they'll be happy and willing to sink more investment into the farm fields. And once they have the adequate capacity, more knowledge in terms of how to go about the production, then we'll see the real difference being impacted. The point being that it's not a one-month thing. We need a more coordinated approach. We live in a country where cocoa, for example, no one has the right to export cocoa apart from Cocoa Board itself. So it's a huge stakeholder in the industry one way or the other. And they need to live up to the billing, just as the farmers themselves.
Okay, let's bring in Fifi now to respond to some of the concerns you're raising. But while you're at that, Fifi, the issue about the priority for farmers themselves. It appears if we put our land to other uses aside the issue of planting cocoa trees, they may yield more returns on investment.
Well, I do not share the opinion that using the land for mining illegal mining is a better alternative, because experience has shown that farmers that decided to give their lands to these illegal miners, after a year, almost everything that was given to them was gone. They had no resource to rely on. And it is better for them to stick with the cocoa farm instead of just relying on the money that is the lump sum that is offered to them at a go. But beyond that, Joseph was talking about the fact that productivity generally is low. Yes, this is true, because if you compare Ghana to the Latin American countries that he talked about, these are large-scale farmers that apply all the technologies. In our case, you have farmers who are doing just 1 acre, and the level of commitment to it is very low. And they say that, well, it is not really something they have the resources to back it. And even in instances whereby farmer education and the training go on for them to appreciate the fact that there's a need for them to invest more into it, the appreciation is not really there. So the smallholder farmers, if you want to do a direct comparison with the large-scale farmers, I think that is a bit unfair to do that comparison. But beyond that, Cocoa Board is introducing a number of productivity enhancement programs, and these productivity enhancement programs are likely to ensure that the farmers are able to improve their productivity. For example, the nationwide mass pruning that is ongoing, the pan pollination, irrigation being introduced, among other productivity enhancement programs that Cocoa Board is running. Because to us, we believe that it is not for us to continue looking for new lands to plant cocoa, but then be more productive on the available land. That is the way to go, and that's exactly what we are working on now.
Anyway, I would have to leave the conversation here, but I'm grateful for your time, Fifi Bafo, the Public Affairs Manager at Cocoa Board. Earlier, you heard from Joseph Opoku-Gakpo and Anthony Morrison, who's CEO for the Agribusiness Chamber. You're still with us here on The Pulse. When we get back, we'll zoom into the education sector. There's a lot happening there. Please stay. And you're welcome back. Education Minister Dr. Yao-Osei Tuchum is reiterating government's commitment to reforming teacher training in Ghana. The minister, who today spent some time commissioning and inaugurating 17 governing councils of some colleges of education across the country, disclosed to JoyNews an elaborate plan to deal with the infrastructural deficit confronting colleges of education across the country. He also added that beyond the issue of infrastructure, a lot more will be done, which will be targeted at churning out hands-on and practically oriented teachers who will in turn improve the basic education sector.
I think we've done 10 so far. We have 7 more to go, and we'll have completed about 27 councils out of the 40 plus. So today is, I think, a historic day. We've never done this many before, but so far it's going on smoothly. Colleges of education play a pivotal role in education in the country, and getting their boards established and inaugurated are a very important aspect of my work as a minister, and we are grateful to the President for giving us this opportunity. I think all the colleges that came through their council, they're enthusiastic, they want to bring about transformation, and we encourage them to do so. So I'm grateful that you all came to cover this event today. The colleges are getting new facilities. Every college is getting a 300-bed hostel so that they can increase enrollment. That's a principal obligation of the government, and we believe in most of the campuses, construction has begun. We also want them to prepare the trainees to suit the deployment of the new curriculum. Student-centered learning environment should begin from the colleges, so that the teachers, when they graduate, will be well-versed in creating a student-centered learning environment. If the colleges are producing trainees or training the trainees in a lecturer-directed environment, it will be difficult for them to transition into student-centered teaching and learning environment. So thank you. No, it's
Secretary Minister there. Joining us via Zoom, Professor Jonathan Fletcher, Key Advisor, Teaching and Learning Partnership at TTL. Laria K. Agbado is an editor, the Colleges of Education Weekly Journal. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Prof, an assurance there by the Sector Minister that indeed infrastructure will be dealt with aggressively in all the training colleges. Is this the only issue confronting the colleges? And what more could be done to reform teacher training?
Well, thank you very much. And let me take this opportunity to say hi to your cherished viewers. Yes, infrastructure is key. In fact, that is perhaps the one most important, single most important aspect of the college, the things that colleges of education need. And I think when that is solved, a lot of other problems will, because it's like, if you need a library, you need to build a library, a building before you get the books and so on. So therefore, infrastructure is key. This is the thing that is actually going to turn these colleges of education into real tertiary institutions.
What more beyond the structures?
Well, of course, as an institution, and also let's bear in mind that these are specialist institutions designed to train quality teachers for our basic education institutions. And therefore, all they are doing is making sure that they get the right resources. First of all, they need to get the right staff. They need to get the right equipment. They need to get the the resource, the teaching and learning materials that they need. But as I said earlier, once the infrastructure has been sorted, these other things can be sorted too, because as I said, if it's a library that you need the buildings first, and then you can stop the buildings with resources.
And for you, Larry, of course, 17 new governing councils, adding up to the earlier 10, making them 27. Why is it taking us so long to get these governing councils?
2 years to do that now. It's better late than never at all. So we commend the minister and most importantly the President of the Republic for constituting the council. So far we have 27. We still have about 19 more to go. And we are hoping that within the time left before the year ends, we should have the rest 19 colleges also having their councils inaugurated.
We're having a bit of a difficulty hearing you. If you could just speak up for us a bit. The issue about some reforms that are on the table of the sector minister as part of issues that he needs to address. We understand you put up a document after a stakeholder dialogue on that. What are some of the key factors beyond the issue of the infrastructure? Because the government, through the minister, is giving us indication that some new structures will be springing up across all the colleges of education. What more did you put in that document, which is before the minister?
So in that document, I think just on Sunday, we had a discussion on where there were issues of conditions of service for CTAG members. There was a meeting today. We are yet to get the outcome of that meeting to know how things went. Currently, as we speak, the colleges are still down. Things are still not picking up yet because of that CTAG mandatory leave. We are hoping that things should pick up from there. There are also other issues of a roadmap for colleges after their initial 4 years affiliation to the universities, their mentoring universities. In all, we are hoping that the minister, together with other stakeholders, will pick up these documents and then implement the resolutions that all the stakeholders that matter in teacher education came together to put up.
Prof, the issue about the conditions of service for trainings, the teacher lecturers in the various colleges of education, it's come up really strongly. Already we are getting minority asking that the teachers return to the classrooms in the interest of the students. But there's a core issue there about their conditions of service. Can we ever get to a point where, of course, their conditions will be equal to that of those in the public universities?
Well, of course. I think it's possible. I think we need to do that as soon as we can to prevent a situation where most of these colleges of education tutors are actually leaving to look for greener pastures, so to speak, in the universities, because that's the only thing that will make sure that they attract, the quality staff and non-teaching and teaching that they need, the colleges need. So I think it's one of the things that we need to be serious about, making sure that the conditions of service are improved significantly so that we can keep the loyal tutors who have been in the colleges for years so that they'll be able to develop and produce and if you like, implement a curriculum which is new, which is a curriculum which is going to make sure that learning outcomes in our classrooms are enhanced.
The argument has been made that the entry-level qualifications vary, and the reason for which government is having some difficulties. Giving that ground, would you advise CTAG to tone down on their demands?
Well, I'm not sure about entry qualifications. I know the colleges of education are tertiary institutions, and therefore it's the same entry qualifications that you need to for universities. Obviously, they all need 6 subjects and at least 6 credits. If you're talking about cutoff points, that's different. But they are equally qualified. A lot of them are qualified to enter into universities. It's just that for some reason they have opted to study in colleges of education. So as far as the entry qualification is concerned, I think that there's parity. What we need to do is to increase the resources in those colleges. And as I said, apart from the infrastructure, you need resources, which will also make the tutors do the work that they're supposed to do.
Yes, but in this case, I'm talking about the tutors and the qualification upon which they are recruited to lecture in the various institutions. That's what I was referring to.
Oh, okay, then that's fine. Yes,
right.
now obviously, yes, there is a difference because, for example, the minimum qualification that a tutor in a college of education needs to teach in a college of education is a Master of Philosophy. In the universities, the minimum is supposed to be a PhD. So in that sense, yes, there is that difference. And obviously, as I said, because of that, there are a lot of colleges of education tutors trying to gain this minimum qualification that will enable them to teach in universities. And a number of them, I mean, a lot of them have actually left the college of education to go and work in the university. And that is not healthy because if they are going to develop themselves and leave the college, then we're back to square one because the people they are leaving behind aren't as experienced as they are. So much as I agree that the different qualifications are required to teach at this level, so I think it's important to make sure that the quality, conditions of service are improved enough or well to actually keep them in there. It's important for them to, after developing themselves, stay in the colleges of education and use the experience to good effect in there.
Let's wrap up on the issue of the thorny issue of the teacher training allowances. Larry, obviously, when you held that stakeholder dialogue, we do know that the students are kicking against any plan at all to cancel the monthly stipend. Government is backing them fully. The minister there indicating that he will not scrap the allowance. And yet some experts believe that we could be channeling the stipends into improving the conditions of what's happening on campus and even the lecturers. What's the consensus on this matter?
Of the trainee teachers allowance. So currently, I'm not sure we have any plan of cancelling the allowance. There's no discussion about that. The bigger discussion the students are requesting for is that they wouldn't want a case where the political parties will have to be using these allowances to campaign, like using it as a campaign tool in the colleges, because they feel that aside the allowance, there are other equally important issues that deserve attention in the colleges. We just heard of issues of infrastructure being mentioned by the minister. Prof talked about staff attrition in the colleges. There are other key issues in the colleges that deserve this national attention that we give to the issues of teacher trainees allowance. The colleges are now tertiary institutions, just like those from Winneba, UCC. For the first time in the history of Ghana, we are going to have graduates from these colleges coming out with BEd, that is Bachelor of Education. So as we seek to come out with the results of the reforms that have taken place over the past 4 or 5 years, at least we should also be looking at the equity among these institutions. But that's a conversation for another day. Having that conversation now will only amount to a whole different discussion now.
If there's an urgent need for reform, how soon should we be taking off with that? At least infrastructure, we know, may not end anytime soon. It may take some time.
Yeah, with regards to the infrastructure, the government is trying its best. Currently, we have all the 46 colleges of education being given, 300-bed hostel facilities, but that's not enough. Though they've started, but that's not enough. I've been going around the colleges in the past few weeks, and then I realized that even in some colleges, the project hasn't commenced yet, but you go to other colleges and they've passed the level of foundation and others. So we need some commitment on the part of government. You interact with some contractors that have been awarded contracts on these projects, and the key issue they mentioned is issue of funding. They really want to get the funds and get to sites to work. So we also need some commitment on the part of government. There are other key issues. The infrastructure, as Prof said earlier, what we have is not enough, but it's better than none. We still need more, because now with a new program that is being run in the colleges of education, it's a 4-year program where you have students, all 4-year cohorts of students staying on campus fully. It's just a particular semester that students are out for practice. So the infrastructure is actually a key issue. Once we have the infrastructure in place, it affects other areas of their training.
Okay. Prof, your final thoughts on the issue of the allowances?
It will be extremely difficult to do without the allowances. And I think we need to consider that very carefully. It is also providing us with the opportunity to get people to go to or to enter into these colleges of education. And as I said, these are specialized institutions. They're not just just institutions like our universities where you have a lot of programs being run. I mean, these colleges are running a Bachelor of Education program, and that's the main program they are running all over the country. And it's done in such a way that they are able to do a lot of practical work, and the allowance is actually supporting some of them to visit schools and do the training in school. So I think if we can afford it, why not? So that they will be able to use this allowance to improve their performance in the colleges, and also when they come out as teachers, they will be able to deliver the basic school curriculum successfully.
Professor Jonathan Fletcher, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
The minority in Parliament is taking on the National Communications Authority and Sector Minister Eslaozu Ekufo over the ongoing SIM card re-registration exercise. The minister says government will not renew the September 30 deadline, after which SIM cards of unregistered users will be totally blocked. The regulator, NTA, announced a raft of punitive measures to push persons who are yet to register to do so. Although reports indicate these punitive measures have been halted, Minority Leader Haruna Idrisa says the actions of the NTA and Eslaozu Ekufo are steeped in arrogance and contrary to the laws.
Calling on the Ministry of Communication and the National Communication Authority to desist from treating the communication sector as personal fiefdoms at the peril of the country's development. We do not think that the NCA have the power and authority under the 1992 Constitution to curtail fundamental rights with those mere directives that they have given. The story is told even of a refugee who wants to get registered onto a Ghana card. When he goes, they are charging him as a normal foreigner. Let them be told that there is a distinction between a refugee in Ghana and a foreigner living in Ghana, and that we will not sit aloof whilst they encroach the privacy of communication, guaranteed rights of Ghanaians in the name of SIM registration. Use of communication services. What is obtaining now is an unnecessary request for registration, re-registration, multiple registration of SIMs for contrived reasons. And I emphasize that registration, re-registration, then we end up with a blockade. They are simply punishing Ghanaians over their own failures and inability to synchronize data between the National Identification Authority and mobile operators in Ghana. That punishment on the Ghanaian citizen remains unjustified.
There's more actually from the minority leader, who says they will not back down on their support for a class action against government. Deputy Ranking, a member of the Communications Committee, Sam George, says that this is the only way government will back down.
NCA is without prejudice to the September 30th deadline. So the September 30th deadline threat of blocking all unregistered SIM cards still holds. And even in the period that the SIM cards were blocked last week, persons suffered damages. And those damages are what we're seeking to claim for on behalf of our constituents using the class action suit. So we will still proceed irrespective of what is done.
And thanks for staying with us here on The Pulse. We'll be back shortly. And you're welcome back now. Some farmers and residents living along the flowway of the White Volta River in the northeast region are appealing for assistance to salvage their drowning food crops following the spillage of the Bagre Dam by Burkina Faso. According to the farmers, the damage to their farm produce will worsen their poor living conditions as they have invested their life savings into the farms. The dam was opened on the 1st of the month and is expected to coincide with heavy rains to cause massive floods in some 185 communities and affect an estimated 200,000 people in the north of the country. In response to the spillage, farmers in the communities of Kwesingpe have actually begun harvesting their immature crops, as these spilled waters may make their farmlands actually not in the best of shape. So let's get more from correspondent Ilyasu Stanko, who has more in this report.
53-year-old Alasan Yao is a subsistence farmer at Pasingpe community in the Westman Presi municipality of the Northeast region. Together with his senior brother and 2 teenage boys, they have been working around the clock to harvest the crops on these 2-hectare maize fields in response to a flood alert issued by the National Disaster Management Organization.
We hear that they are going to spill the Bagre Dam. And as of now, the maize is not yet matured. And when it's not mature like that, when you harvest the crop, you don't have place to dry them. So normally, at times, most of them will spoil. So because of the Bagre Dam that we are harvesting them early like that.
Alasan and his brother are among the dozens of local farmers in this community who have inherited farmlands within the buffer zones of the White Volta River and the flowway of the Bagre Dam from Burkina Faso. The farmlands here are fertile, however, not conducive for cultivation during the rainy season, when the spillage of the dam often occurs. During this period every year, the farmers are compelled to harvest their crops in their immature state.
When they open the water like this, at times our farm inputs, everything will go away and leave us. And more to the point, it brings disaster to us. So when we are in it, fighting to get our foodstuffs, maybe some of them will lose their life through that. So because of that, it disturbs us too much. So we are building to any government or any NGO who can come and assist us to canoes or anything that can help us. When the water comes like this, we can be able to convey our things before the water comes and take over the land.
Close to Alasan's farm, 42-year-old Salamatu Amadou has led her entire household to also salvage their maize farmland as the water from the spillage makes its way towards the area. She said they were responding to the flood warning sent out weeks ago by the Disaster Management Organization. As part of the preparations to move to the higher grounds, some farmers whose farmlands are submerged already are risking their lives using old canoes trying to harvest their drowning crops. They are calling on the National Disaster Management Organization to deploy canoes to help them harvest their crops.
If the water comes and we are going to harvest our maize, we don't have plenty boats here. Some go inside the water, maybe it's next day, and then the small insects, they are all affecting. Somebody can get snake bites, and maybe if he didn't get that, he would die because of it.
The opening of the Bagre Dam is an annual occurrence since 1994 that often coincides with heavy rains to leave a devastating trail of destruction in some 185 communities within the Sada zone. The spillage in 2020 led to the death of over 10 people and massive destruction of properties, including farmlands and social infrastructures in the region. The National Disaster Management Organization has since arrived in the region and activated its flood response exercise codenamed Operation Thunderbolt. The Director General, Eric Nana Ajiman Prempe, led the stakeholders dialogue at Nalirgu on how to coordinate the floods that could occur as a result of the spillage.
Already some communities have been affected. They are cut off already. The water is now coming. Let me give you this information. For the first time in the history, the flow of the water, the rate is very high. Today, the water is coming at 672 million gallons per hour.
The Director General repeated the notice for all those carrying out activities along the riverbanks to immediately stop and evacuate.
Let us all encourage our people to harvest their crops, those on the banks. Let us also advise them, those who have livestock, to get them to a safer place. so that at the end of the day, the water will not wash them.
He said NADMO will continue to provide technical and relief support to the people affected by this annual occurrence, while urging the residents to pray so that the government could get finances to continue with the construction of the Pualugu multi-purpose dam project.
This is a project we should all pray that government gets finances to complete it, and it will help us. And this is a long-term solution to the
Until then, the twin annual occurrence caused by the spillage of the dam and the torrential seasonal rains will continue to wreak havoc on the lives and livelihoods of poor farmers in the north of the country. For Joy News, Ilyas Sutanko, Wale Wale.
And that's all we have for you here on the Pulse on the JoyNews channel. I am Blessed Sogah. Do log on to myjoyonline.com. We have a lot of stories for you there.